For Elena Arcangelo, the future can be full of uncertainty when it comes to climate change. Arcangelo is an insect breeder and exhibitor at the Butterfly Place in Westford, Massachusetts. The Butterfly Place has an indoor garden that raises butterflies and offers educational opportunities for community members to learn more about butterflies. Arcangelo has had an interest in insects since she was a child.
When I was 3, my dad brought home live Maine lobsters and let them loose on the floor, and I called them bugs. And ever since then, I've been obsessed with bugs, even though my first bug was technically a crustacean.
But as irregular weather caused by climate change and habitat loss caused by humans become more common, some butterflies can expect a lower lifespan and a change in migration.
As far as climate change in particular, what we're noticing is a huge decrease in numbers and timing. So when I first started working here, we would start, and again, the iconic monarch is who I'm going to be working with because they're migratory. So I can't start raising monarchs until I get my monarchs up here. We used to start looking for monarchs around Memorial Day weekend. So we would, look on the milkweed, and that's when we would start finding monarchs. Now, I don't even start looking for monarchs until the end of June, usually the 4th of July. So there's a huge decrease in the number of monarchs that are able to migrate up here to lay eggs.
Arcangelo considers butterflies, particularly monarch butterflies, as the gateway bug.
So I often can use the monarch butterfly as kind of a jumping off point to teach people about their importance in ecology, which is huge.
Female butterflies lay about 400 eggs. Around 2% of those eggs become adult butterflies. Butterflies are primary consumers in the food pyramid, so creatures like spiders, birds, and squirrels feed on eggs and caterpillars.
And as the food web goes, when you run out of primary consumers, then you're going to, it has this huge ripple effect. So that's why insects are vital.
This ripple effect can cause other populations that rely on butterflies as a source of food to decrease. Butterflies typically live for about 2 to 4 weeks. In February, monarch butterflies mate in Mexico, and over time they lay eggs along the way as they migrate to Texas. In addition to raising and releasing more butterflies, Arcangelo said that more people can do their part by growing more host plants like clovers or daisies, or letting certain parts of their yard run wild so butterflies can live and thrive there. While there are solutions to helping butterflies, other factors hurting butterfly populations like climate change can sometimes make it difficult, but not impossible, to remain optimistic about the future.
It depends on the day, my friend. Some days I cry a lot. Because I'm like, what am I doing? It's very sad. It's very frustrating. And then I have a good support system in this community. And they say that makes what we do here even more important.
When Joe Christo lived in New York, he witnessed the devastating aftermath of Hurricane Sandy in 2012. The experience led him back to Boston, where he wanted to help the city, which is no stranger to severe storms, become prepared for the worst. Christo is the managing director at Stone Living Lab, which is a climate change research center in Boston Harbor. It's a partnership between UMass Boston School for the Environment, Boston Harbor Now, and federal, state, and local government.
We're researching nature-based approaches to climate adaptation, which is essentially trying to promote more green infrastructure over gray infrastructure. Some of our projects include looking at living seawalls, cobble berms, work with salt marshes, and doing so throughout the harbor that's here behind us.
Coastal storms, sea level rise, storm water flooding, and extreme heat are a few major climate threats that Boston needs to prepare for, Christo said.
Nature-based approaches really help with all four of those in a way that a traditional granite seawall doesn't. Not only does it help with coastal storms and flooding, oftentimes better than a granite seawall would, but it also provides these co-benefits like increased biodiversity, increased carbon sequestration, cooling effects on neighborhoods, being able to provide better quality of life for area residents.
As extreme flooding and sea level rise continue to impact Boston, Christo said more residents are starting to talk about climate change because the effects are happening right in front of them.
Where we're standing here on Long Wharf is a real sort of touch point for folks to really analyze and look at how climate change is affecting the city, because it's a very visible place, it's a very public place, it's right on the harbor, and it's really the level of flooding we're seeing here more and more often is significantly more than we were seeing in 2008 when I had left town.
But despite the unpredictability of today's climate, the lab continues to remain positive about what they can collectively do to address climate change.
We don't take a doom and gloom approach. We don't find that productive or helpful. So yeah, we do take that optimistic approach, and I do personally too. I've seen climate disasters affect cities in really profound ways, such as Sandy in New York, but during that time I also saw people at their absolute best, helping one another, helping the city, thinking about how we help nature as well. And I see the same thing in Boston here every day.
Although what's in store for the future of climate change worries Bill Perkins, he's hopeful that the bees in the world will manage. Perkins is the president of the Boston Area Beekeepers Association, which represents urban beekeepers and has a beekeeping school. Perkins said he grew comfortable being surrounded by bees from an early age. He started his first beehive in the mid-70s and opened his beekeeping shop in Jamaica Plain in 2012.
I've always been interested and always tried to do it, but it really wasn't until I opened up this shop that I got sort of into it. I really dove into it headlong, and I've been doing it every year since. I do it mostly because I love it. I sort of love the zen of being in a beehive and working with the bees. It's a lovely experience. It's the only livestock that you can work in the city, and again, I guess my urge to be around animals harkens back to how and where I grew up.
For Perkins, his love for bees and beekeeping stems from what he said is humans' natural connection to Earth.
I think we're all children of nature. We're all natural beings, and we emerged from nature, and we lived, intimately with it until the Industrial Revolution that sort of allowed us to break the chains that kept us as either hunters or gatherers or in some way connected to the earth. And
while climate change can largely impact bees by contributing to habitat loss, Perkins said bees are resilient.
Perhaps the fact that they're so sort of resilient and adaptable means that they'll be a little better able to weather the storm, so to speak. But I think it's hard to know what's in store for any of us, really.
Instead, Perkins said the biggest threat to bees is a parasite called the varroa mite that was introduced to the U.S. in the mid-1980s. Beekeepers use chemicals like organic acids, formic acids, and oxalic acids to get rid of the mites. However, warm weather, especially in the winter, is causing bees to come out of their hives sooner to look for forage, Perkins said. Because of this, bees are reliant on beekeepers.
Is that we're having to sort of leave more honey and or feed them more, and we can actually supplant or supplement their feed a little bit if they're low on honey by feeding them just basically sugar syrup. And we're feeding them more or leaving more honey, and that's kind of what we're seeing.
Although bees are resilient and adaptable, Perkins said there are still many issues ahead related to climate change that should be of concern. But he's hopeful that the future of bees is bright because of beekeepers.
if there were no people, there would be no bees. I think it's just an unfortunate fact, but that's kind of what it's come down to now.